Good afternoon. This is the Accounts and Audit Committee meeting of the 2nd of February. And before we start, just the usual notices. Fire evacuation. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this afternoon. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. Fire exits are located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Yes. And please, can all members and public switch their phones to off or turn to silent, please. Okay, so apologies for absence today, Councillor Leake and Councillor Marks, and there are no substitutions. No others? No. Urgent matters? Any urgent matters? No urgent matters have been brought. Yep.
Before we just go any further, can I use this opportunity to just establish what is exactly the situation in relation to the chairmanship of this committee? Are you now the temporary permanent substitute chair, or what's Councillor Mark's position? Is the councillor ill? I asked that question for a particular reason.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure I can give you a complete answer. I've been asked as Vice Chairman to take over as Acting Chairman, initially because of Councillor Marks being unwell, and that has continued. I haven't been told, as far as I understand, this is a case-by-case, meeting-by-meeting, so that I haven't been informed that it's you are now chairing or being put up for chairmanship. So at the moment, I'm Acting Chairman for this committee, pending Councillor Marks's return as the chairman.
Thank you, Chair. It's just that I didn't recall being advised of his illness, and that being the cause for it. It's just apologies for non-attendance, and I wish him a speedy recovery and return to his duties as chairmanship, albeit I'm quite happy for you to continue.
So, next item on the agenda is the minutes of a previous meeting. Any comments or questions regarding the minutes before or just that would stop me signing the minutes at the end of this meeting?
Chair, sorry. I asked before the meeting if we could have a discussion in closed session. I don't know whether it needs to be mentioned now, because otherwise it won't be on the agenda, about the write-offs that were presented to the Scrutiny Committee the other week.
The question we have is that if it's a discussion that is going to be on the agenda, the committee has no papers to go with, and therefore we cannot discuss it. So at this stage, if you'd like to have it brought to the committee, the next one. Yep.
That's fine, thanks.
So going back to Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like just to draw the committee's attention to my requests made in the 24th of November with regard to the Ethical Principles Panel, Members Panel. So therefore, we are now 2 months on, and I haven't received any notification of appointed relevant officer, and until such time as that can be done, that panel cannot meet. And I would like to then continue to register my disappointment in the lack of, I would suggest, priority given to this issue by officers.
Kevin, we go to.
Thank you. I can only apologise to members that we haven't been able to identify leads at the moment. We're currently working on doing that, and I was going to suggest that I get back to the chair very shortly by the end of the week.
Could we have a better explanation as to the reason for the delay? Is there no officers that can be made available, or is it just sort of fallen off the radar, as has been the experience of myself in relation to this matter over a number of years?
Chair. I could give a bit more explanation, and it certainly hasn't fallen off the radar. As you're aware, we've reflected the committee's comments in the future paper that's on the agenda. One of the approaches to resourcing the committee was to use the council's talent management pool of people. They are refreshed each year, so we're going through that process of identifying suitable leads, and it's taken longer, unfortunately, than I'd initially anticipated.
So in purpose of resolving this, if you're saying that by the end of this week you can give us the name, that will enable us to move forward and bring the subcommittee to be able to have its own meeting.
As I say, I can only apologise to members, but that's the position we're in.
Any other points from the minutes?
Sorry, I'm pretty certain that Paul Harvey substituted for me at that meeting. I think he did, and he's not there because I was watching it from home and sending him texts during. You have to watch out. You know.
Evidence.
Any other points at all from the minutes? Okay. So we'll take the minutes and you'll make the changes to them. Yep. Item 5, use of regulation of investigatory powers. Who's taking that one? Oh, sorry. The committee requested note that since the last meeting, there have been no requests or authorization granted for the following: directed surveillance and covert human intelligence source. Okay. So moving on, item.
I apologise for interjecting, but I will continue to do so, as you know. I read the whole of the document, which was the new rules in terms of covert and authorization, etc., etc.
Councillor Keating, sorry.
On that, it's not minutes.
Regulation of investigation.
No, this is the future issue is on a later item on the agenda. This is a report for the previous period that there have been no items. So, sort of from what your comment was, I wasn't quite sure which way you're going with it.
You're not on paper B yet?
No.
Okay, can I just refer to the item that you have identified, which is not under documentation here? Can I just say, I have been a particular active councillor in seeking to ensure that we get full and proper reports about authorisations for. I've no interest whatsoever in delving into the detail of any particular case. But there are processes by which we can decide for ourselves to undertake investigations, overt or covert. There are processes whereby other people, like for example, and I'm doing an example, the county council might involve us or ask our assistants to help them to carry out surveillance of covert or overt nature. The reports that we currently get only refer to actual decisions by Basingstoke and Dean to initiate, but that does not cover the potential involvement of Basingstoke and Dean in assessing other people who have initiated overt or covert surveillance from outside, but who involve us in the carrying out of it or the effectively co-authorizing. So I'm concerned that we're not getting a full and accurate picture. And I leave that there for the purposes of the minutes, because I will come back to it later when the other process is on the agenda. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on? Don't you?
On that particular point, if it was a joint investigation with another authority, so the police or the county council, the lead authority for the investigation would be responsible for obtaining RIPA authorisation.
I do understand that.
And our staff who may be involved in the exercise, they would be responsible for ensuring that that authorisation has been obtained and being clear about what actually they are authorised to do. That wouldn't, though, as you say, be reported on the standing item which comes to every one of these committees, because that just refers to the council's use of RIPA. So that's where the council has authorised and gone through the magistrates process for our own enforcement activities.
Thank you very much for that clarification, because that is exactly the point I'm making. I do not believe that if we as a borough council in one form or another are involved in an investigation supporting an external authorization, I do not believe that that should be unreported, because otherwise things are happening with our officers, with our within our authority, which is totally unrecorded as far as we are concerned. And I believe the Audit and Accounts Committee have an obligation to request that such activity is recorded and reported. Thank you.
Do you want to move that on in the policy report that's coming up in a later part of the meeting?
As long as I have the opportunity within the meeting, Chair, yes. Otherwise, nonetheless, I want the point I have just made recorded for the minutes, because you read out a statement which we normally get in writing. Thank you.
If I may, just to try and assist, I think what Councillor Keating, well, I'm assuming Councillor Keating is looking for this on page 4 of 181, 3414 statement to incorporate whether there has been any investigation that our officers have been involved in that's come from a lead other organisation. And I believe that should be covered here, not necessarily in the Hortby.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chair. For the avoidance of doubt, could I first of all say we have repeatedly got the information about what has occurred or not occurred, i.e. there's no investigation or whatever, in writing as part of our papers. It is unfortunate that we haven't got it this time. I would like to ensure that it is recorded in future. No, that's the minutes of the previous meeting referring backwards. Page 2. Second.
Thanks, Chair. If I can help the committee. Page 2 of the agenda, the usual item for the committee is item 5, and that was, I believe, that's the wording the chair read out. So the normal recording is there as item 5.
If I may, Chair, I've no doubt that what's being said by the officers is accurate and correct. But I genuinely believe that if there's something, an item on the agenda, that needs to be referred to as an agenda item later. If it's on the agenda, it should be item 5, referred to in the agenda, and this is the situation. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, notice. I mean, if the committee, I mean, I think we've been round bring around a loop on this one, members, if I could say, if members are saying, of the committee are saying actually what they would like is just an agenda item and a one-page paper that says what the position is, then I'm sure we can do that. If that's what the committee wants, we do that.
Because I believe, Sri Chair, that then enables us to expand that discussion rather than just receiving a statement. Thank you.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Is that what the committee wants overall? I mean, that's Councillor Keating's view. Does anybody have anything else they would like to add to that as a point before we note that and make sure it happens? No. Okay. Item 6, Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, Annual Review of Policy.
Yes, paper B. This is the annual report for the committee to approve the council's policy in relation to regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. The covering paper summarises the main changes to the policy. These are under 3.2. And the committee is asked to approve the policy and to authorise the Head of Commissioning and Governance as Senior Responsible Officer to make minor amendments to ensure the policy remains up to date. As clarification to minor amendments, this would cover things such as terminology changes, new best practice notes, definition or precedents set, and outcomes from decisions by either the Information Commissioner's Office or the Office of Surveillance Commissioners, which oversees RIPA. And they are things that are not considered to be law or legislative. Any fundamental changes to the policy would be reported back to this committee.
Councillor Pearce.
Just briefly, I'm sorry, I don't agree that minor amendments can be made by an officer without reference to this committee, but maybe to help, that perhaps we could do it on an annual basis if they really are minor, and just have a paper once a year that says these are the changes that have occurred. And if we didn't agree with them, we'd have to think about that. But I don't think it's right that we should leave it wholly in the hands of an officer.
Councillor Keating.
I wholeheartedly support that point in relation to Councillor Pearce. I read the whole of the report because it's an item of interest to me regularly. On page 13, 1.2, it's one sentence, by the way, but I think the is not is perhaps reversing the situation. The council policy is not to undertake such activities.
Sorry.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. Would you continue the?
I'll continue. An additional point I want to make in relation to 3.52, starting on page 14, 3.5.2, and I believe that particular paragraph should conclude with one additional bullet point saying words to the effect of a report will be produced and sent to the audit committee. Can I move? Shall I just go on? Okay, moving to page 16. 4.8. It says examples of where a local authority may not authorize well, the offence be investigated attracts a maximum custodial assistance of 6 months or more. So if they won't authorize under 4.7, 4.8 is an example, who does authorize? That's a question. Shall I move on? Okay.
There are a number of questions, you better take them individually. I think.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to get.
Thank you.
In relation to that particular point, local authorities are unable to use RIPA unless it's a criminal offence attracting a custodial sentence of at least 6 months imprisonment. RIPA doesn't authorise us to actually do anything. It provides protection against the breach of Article 8 of the Human Rights Act. So it allows us to breach an individual's right to privacy, but only in certain circumstances. So if there was an enforcement issue, if it was an offence that didn't hold a custodial sentence of at least 6 months, so for example dog fouling, we would be unable to use RIPA to investigate by undertaking covert surveillance to do so. RIPA, or the lack of RIPA, doesn't actually stop councils undertaking covert surveillance. It just provides a level of protection if we were to do that. But we are not allowed to actually ask for RIPA authorisation now unless it is a custodial sentence offence.
Thank you. So if, for example, somebody was fly tipping of a serious nature, I don't mean of dropping a handkerchief, serious fly tipping, that might result in a custodial sentence if it was repeated or serious. So would we be excluded then from?
Fly tipping does, the offence of fly tipping does hold a custodial sentence of at least 6 months. So if the offence being investigated may lead to a custodial sentence of at least 6 months, then we are permitted to apply for RIPA authorisation if that is the only way to investigate that offence.
Yes.
On the same page, 4.10, it starts out, indicates a joint working, etc., etc., etc. One authorization, one organization is required. What I'm saying here is there should be a bullet point under that opening paragraph which says, and will be reported to the audit committee. In other words, if Basingstoke is going to conduct joint working with another agency in terms of covert or overt surveillance, then it's involving our resources and our officers, and it should be a routine matter of report to this committee where we're talking about the use of covert and overt surveillance. I'm not talking about doing things, I'm talking about reporting them. Thank you, Chair.
Jackie, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, that's fine. We can add that to the paper that you now want to every meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. That's very helpful. Thank you. I'm just moving on. Page 19, 513.2. The third bullet point down, the same point is appropriate in my view, should be part of the report to the audit committee.
Sorry, Councillor Keating, can
Yes,
you
of
just
course.
clarify that one? 513.2, bullet point 3. Is that what it is?
513.2, the third bullet point, yes. Officers viewing an individual profile should do so only in order to obtain evidence. Right. All I'm simply saying is it should be reported to the committee that under this particular category of activity, someone did look at a particular social activity. I'm not talking about names, and I'm not talking about us investigating in any shape or form.
So you're saying the number of occurrences?
The number of occurrences, yeah.
Sorry, Chair. Is that right?
Councillor Keating, your mic's on. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks. I remember when I read this the first time, I got awfully confused about this 13.2 because, and I think it's a difficult, I don't suggest I've got any answers, but it's a difficult area. I don't understand how you can talk about, you can't use your account to look at somebody else's account. Well, that is the only way that you can look at somebody else's account, unless you're registering Basingstoke and Dean as a Facebook page, and you go in on that Facebook page and then look at somebody else's, but you'd only be able to look at the public bit. And if you weren't a friend and they didn't have all their profile public, you wouldn't be able to look at it. And I think there's more, it's more complex than is written down here. And certainly there's some advice, has been advice knocking around in the HR field, which is making it even more complicated, because it simply is that, you know, with Twitter, with Facebook, with 3 or 4 others. And I'm not sure that does it.
In relation to things like Facebook, and I'm not an expert in Facebook, if somebody's profile is open, so they've not set any privacy settings at all, it is possible to actually go in and view that. I understand, without logging in yourself. I might be wrong, and if I am wrong, I do apologise. But
Yes, it is. You're right.
yeah, the recommendations here are that officers must not friend people on social networking sites, and they shouldn't then log in as themselves in order to obtain information that is protected by privacy settings. That's a definite no. You're not allowed to do that. What this is talking about is the looking at profiles where there is no privacy setting for whatever reason. And it is a particularly difficult area, and it's something we haven't previously had in the policy. However, the Chief Surveillance Commissioner has raised it in his annual report 2 years running. There has been some guidance from him, but it's really not clear. There's no, yes, you can do this, but no, you can't do that. The Home Office has recently reissued their codes of practice in relation to RIPA, and they have also now included some guidance on social networking sites. At the moment, we are trying to interpret this because, again, it's not clear. And having asked other authorities how they operate in relation to this particular subject, there is a vast difference. There are some who believe that if somebody's profile isn't private, then they have every right to go in and as many times as they like and look and gather information. What we're trying to do is through the lack of definitive guidance, is set our own position by saying only if it's an open profile, but then you can only go in once to gather your evidence. If you are to continue going into somebody's profile, whether it is open or not, essentially that could be construed as covert monitoring of that person, and we would then say that you would need to get RIPA authorisation to do that. But it's very much likened to what they call drive-bys. So if you believe there is drive-bys, so if you believe there is an offence being committed, in relation to, say, fraud, for example, somebody's claiming single person's discount, but you believe they have somebody living with them, it's allowable to drive by the property once or twice just to see if a car is always there or that sort of. But if your drive-bys become so frequent that it turns out that you're actually monitoring that property, then it falls under RIPA. So it is a fine line, and I think what we're trying to do is just give a position statement to assist staff so that they know what they might be able to do and what they definitely can't do.
I think you probably need to look at it a bit more deeply, because there is no anonymity. Even though you can go into somebody's account without logging yourself, the fact is that Facebook records your IP address. So it can be, you know, with decent, it's not difficult, it's not computer forensics, it's relatively easy to get hold of the IP address. And once you get hold of the IP address, you can probably identify somebody. So I appreciate it's complex. I think it'd be worth you talking to Shella, though, about the issues for staff particularly. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions at all? So the purpose of this paper is to, the committee is to recommend and approve the revised policy and authorise the head of commissioning and governance as is in the agenda. Now, there are 2 points I think that particular. One is the report on a meeting basis of all the activity, including the sub-activity from other agencies that's happening in the Basingstoke and Deane area. Councillor Keating, is that right?
Just for clarification, we already have to get authorisations initiated here. We get a report. The new rules extend the arrangement to our involvement under authorisations sought by other organisations. All I'm suggesting in very simple, it's covert or over surveillance, it's happening on our watch in our organisation, that should be part of the report. But the other point, which is the one that Councillor Pearce raised, was that changes to the policy, irrespective of how many or how apparently meaningless, should always be reported here. Because you can get an accumulative effect of small changes and you could end up being misled. Not intentionally, of course. Thank you.
So, reversing that, does the committee agree with those two views, and does anybody disagree with those two views?
I agree with those two.
Okay.
I agree with those two.
No, I know you. Okay, that's fine. So then, basically, taking those both on board as both the provisos and requirements as part of the policy, that is the committee therefore happy to approve the revised policy, and in the light of a reporting of all amendments to the audit committee, as long as that takes place, then again we're happy with the second point of the recommendation. Councillor Parker.
Before we sign it off, Chair, I think what has to be said in these particular instances, this paper is covering a very complex subject matter, and I want to thank the officer for putting together a report which is, in my view, relatively easy to follow, and I do thank the officer for sending to us the noted intended changes paper before the committee meeting. That in itself is very helpful to get a grasp of what was going to be put before us today. So thanks to the officer.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. I absolutely agree.
I was so busy, I apologise, I missed one bit.
Go on.
On page 25, item 11. This is the, if you like, report to the committee. I believe that the item 11 should be incorporated into that report in one form or another. Thank you, Chair.
Jackie, are you happy? Yep, that will be done. So item 7 on the agenda, PwC draft external audit plan for 2014-15.
Thank you. I'll ask Dan to talk us through the detail. If I just introduce the paper first. This paper sets out our plans for the audit work that we will undertake for the year ending the 31st of March 2015. And that is our work in relation to the financial statements, the Council's return to the National Audit Office. We issue a conclusion on the Council's arrangements for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness. We review the annual governance statement and consider the completeness of the disclosures within that. We consider whether there's anything else we ought to do within the public interest. And then we issue a certificate on completion of our work to the Audit Commission. So our approach in relation to all of those is set out in the paper in front of you. It's a standard paper, and much of the content is required either by auditing standards or by the Code of Audit Practice. And those of you who've been on the committee in previous years will have seen a very similar document with similar content in the past. So there are no significant changes that I want to bring to your attention. The only thing that I'll add at this point is that this year will be PwC's last year as the external auditors of the Council. You have new appointed auditors with effect from the 1st of April 2015, and there will be a phased transition as we conclude our work on the year just gone and they start planning their approach for the year to come. Okay, Dan.
Sorry, Councillor Pearce, we've got a quick question you want to...
Have I missed something? Have they been sacked? It's very brave of you to come and say so.
No, Chair, the Audit Commission, before being statutorily abolished, re-tendered the contracts. So there's been a change in the tendering, and there was a report to the committee, I think it was October or November, that just informed the committee of that change. EY, Ernst & Young.
Thank you, Dan.
Could I thank them for their work for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any disagreements with that? Councillor Keating.
You said that the overall materiality of 1.9 million had been set at a percentage of 2%. How is the 96 grand measured? How do you arrive at that figure, please?
Councillor Keating.
So do you see any difference between somebody in a business operating their own business or us using public money? Do you see no difference? Sorry, £50,000 or £96,000 of public funds, which was raised by law, by the way, is, in my view, has a different value to £96,000 of somebody's private cash, who they should be looking after anyway. You know, because we would have to raise £96,000 by law on the ratepayers to pay back this allowance.
So what we're talking about with the reporting level is what we bring to the committee. Obviously, we look for errors below that and at any level. At some point, though, we draw a line about what we bring to your attention and what we discuss with officers separately. Now, the 96,000 is a standard level and is in line with what we used for you last year and which the committee agreed to. However, if you want a different level, we can absolutely reflect that. The other point to note is some things are material by nature, not by value. For example, directors' emoluments or directors, the earnings of senior officers, and any error around there we would bring to the committee's attention because of its nature, not because of its size. So if I felt that there was something you needed to know about that is lower than this level, I'm going to report it to you anyway. Okay.
My question was, do you apply the same standard irrespective of the fact that we're spending public money?
Just a second. Can I just ask?
Yeah, can I help? Yeah, sorry, I was probably thinking. Sorry, if I can help, I was just going to update on what the figure was, of what the committee chose to do last year. Because last year the committee asked for a different figure than the figure that was in the report. So I just wanted to remind members so that they were aware of what the position was last year. I think last year the committee asked for a figure of 50,000 to be the reporting level. So I just wanted to remind the committee that you looked at a different level last year, but the 96 is the starting level that would come from the external auditor calculation. But as was said, it's for the committee to say what level they would be comfortable with.
If I may, Chair, I still haven't had an answer to the simple question. The simple question: do you have a different figure if it's taxpayers' money or not?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Councillor.
And so, Chair, could I make a proposal that we go back to the £50,000? Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Seconded.
Okay, my apologies. I didn't realise you set a different number last year. I didn't mean to mislead you. Very happy that we go with £50,000 this year.
Is that what the committee overall requires to happen? Then yes, we request 50,000. before we answer, Dan, could I ask you just to bring the microphone a bit closer towards you, in that it's a struggle to pick it up. So, Councillor Keating, sorry, were you going to interject?
Obviously, we're on the record now, whereas before we weren't on the record. We've had some training. It was interesting, but not detailed. That's not a criticism, it's just a statement of how it was. But I think we've had sufficient training, sufficient understanding to say that you can inquire of us. And yes, I am satisfied. I'm not speaking for anyone else. But are we reporting to you, or are you reporting to us?
So in relation to fraud, we've talked about everybody's responsibilities, and we talked about the Audit and Accounts Committee's particular responsibilities. And we are asking for your views in relation to the questions outlined here in terms of how you've discharged your responsibilities.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. This is to some extent putting responsibility onto the committee in that, and rightly so. But from the training session, my understanding was, and it was a point raised by Councillor Keating, which I support, and was taken away by the officer, that we were going to receive a statement of fraud, giving a understanding as to the description of fraud, implications of fraud, with a purpose of ensuring that our understanding of fraud matches your understanding of fraud, and to ensure that we are all working to the same standard. So we can only, I think, at this juncture, make it clear that's the position that we're at yet. We're now awaiting that statement of fraud. Councillor Keating will confirm if I'm right or wrong.
Certainly that's my understanding, that we are going to have some definition to work from. Yeah, that microphone apparently is not working at all. I wonder if you could either take Harriet's or perhaps the one on the left hand as well, whichever's easiest for you.
You could even speak louder.
I could speak louder. Is that better? Yeah, so the fees are set by, sorry, I'm shouting louder and speaking through the microphone now. The fees are increased because of the Audit Commission guidance. We don't expect those to be higher when it comes to the actual audit unless something goes wrong. So we're happy to take any questions on the plan that you may have. There's obviously appendices behind with further information, but please feel free to ask us questions on any of it.
Councillor Keating.
So the Audit Commission guidance becomes obligatory, does it? Guidance versus obligatory?
The fee's obligatory. So the scale rate is the amount the Audit Commission expects us to charge. And there's yes. So there's a long drawn out process if we charge anything else, which is a nightmare to go through.
Councillor Tilbury.
Yes, it refers to the fee being slightly higher on page 13. has increased by £900. But on page 24 of your papers, it refers to the scale fee, significant saving of around 40%, which doesn't seem to tie in with that, or is it referring to something different there?
It refers to, I think that 40% requires to over the course of about 5 years. So your audit fee a few years ago was over 100,000, whereas now it's down to 96. Yeah.
Any other questions at all?
Sorry, it's a serious question. I mean, we're part of the custodians of public money. I mean, is it any way we could get these activities cheaper? And I don't mean that inadequate.
So the answer is that the scale fees have come down by 40% over the last few years, as we've just talked about. And as I said at the start, there's been a retendering exercise, and your fees will come down again next year as a result of that retendering exercise. Within this year, the fees are set by the Audit Commission, and we are contracted by the Audit Commission. The fees are outside of our control.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I would envisage probably that part of that question is within our own control, and that is if we choose to expand our IT capacity to allow conference calling. In terms of, I understand you will have travelled here today, and that's part of your fee.
Is it a fixed fee that you were charged?
It's a fixed fee, yes. It doesn't include travel time.
Councillor Parker.
I'm actually thinking of convenience. I mean, it's, you could still be sat in your own office, and we could still be talking to you, and it's the modern way of doing business now.
Councillor Swedler.
Chair, do we adopt these or agree them, or what?
They're just a statement for information. And
Statement, yes. Well, I'm very happy with them. I'm happy to move on.
Rest of the committee? Okay, thank you. So, item 8 on the agenda, PwC External Auditors Annual Certification Report. Dean.
I'll talk through this one as well. This is a report coming to you on the conclusion of our work in relation to your housing benefit grant claim. So it's a piece of work that we did through the autumn of 2014. The total value of the claim is £48 million, and that's set out on page 58 of your papers, page 2 of this report. There were some minor errors that were amended within the claim form, and the net impact on the subsidy that the authority received was £17. We had to issue a qualification letter setting out some other issues where it couldn't be amended, because in order to undertake so much work to find the real number that it would need to be amended by would not be within the public interest. So those sit in a qualification letter. The net impact of £17 is really driven by a number of unders and overs and misclassifications, and they are set out for you on page 7 of this paper, which is page 63 in your numbers, and they relate to some rent rebates and some rent allowances. There isn't really anything else I want to bring to your attention, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No? Fine. Then we note the report and move on. Thank you very much. Item 9 on the agenda, Treasury Management Monitoring Report for Quarter 3. Dean.
Thank you, Chair. This is paper E. This is the Quarter 3 Treasury Management Monitoring Report. It's the normal report that you're used to. There haven't been any changes since the last report at the last meeting. We're still showing that we have a forecast shortfall of £388,000 due to the delay in the new investment in the diversified credit funds. We have actually, sorry, that's okay. Changes since the last quarter. We have now done £20 million of investment in the new diversified credit funds, and that was at the beginning of December. This is a monitoring report, and we have put in some figures for the monitoring of the diversified credit funds. However, it is too early to have any meaningful monitoring information on those funds. In fact, one of the funds only reports its performance quarterly anyway. And we need to take a sort of longer term view of those particular funds. Nevertheless, we will be including in future reports more details about the monitoring. I did want to talk to you also about monitoring of those particular funds. We've contracted KPMG, who carried out the initial review that arrived at us investing in these funds, to assist with the monitoring of those funds. And basically what we've agreed is a twice yearly meeting with KPMG to discuss the performance of the funds, and once a year the actual fund managers would come down to face us, as it were, with one of those meetings. So I did want to know whether members want to be invited to that meeting. The first meeting is likely to be at the beginning of June, at sort of an initial meeting with the fund managers, so you introduce themselves and talk to us about how they are going to perform. So that was one thing I'd like to sort of ask the committee. Obviously, in between the half yearly and annual meetings, it'll be part of the normal monitoring. So that'll be on a quarterly basis, and obviously we'll be looking at the funds on a monthly basis in-house. The returns from those particular funds are likely to be more unpredictable and more volatile. So in the future, for these monitoring reports, we're going to be looking at separating the externally managed proportion of the portfolio, so that's the diversified credit funds, money market funds and the cash plus funds, from the internally managed section. So there'll be two sort of performance figures that give the overall performance, because we don't really think it's fair that the fund manager's performance should be measured, if you like, as part of the in-house performance. So we just want to separate those two. The only other major issue, or not really an issue, is the valuation of our gilts. Obviously, with the interest rate dropping for 5-year gilts and 10-year gilts, we've seen quite a large increase in the value of the gilts that we currently hold. And we're looking at that because there may be some opportunity to sell those gilts. So that's all I wanted to say. If I could get an indication from you whether you would like to attend the meetings with the fund managers, that would be useful, and I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Councillor Keating.
Surprise, surprise. I appreciate the invitation or the opportunity, but I would not see it as appropriate for me to sit in on such a meeting, because I would be spending the equivalent of a day, including travel and all that kind of stuff, for one minor part of the overall funding arrangement. And I wouldn't necessarily be sufficiently knowledgeable to ask intelligent questions. We won't go into if I do that now. Thank you.
Councillor Sherlock.
I find myself in agreement with Councillor Keating. I'm not sure about the intelligent part of it, though.
Do any other members of the committee have similar or opposing views? Similar.
I'd love to think that I could help, but I actually wouldn't have the time, and I probably don't have the knowledge either. Oh, I was once an internal auditor. Would that help? No.
Well, I think that we therefore appreciate the opportunity and clearly won't take it up, but if individually it still remains available, then great. Yeah.
If things are obviously not going well, we may well change that position. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at all on this one? Councillor Parker first.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to, I think this is going to end up as an observation, but it's a sort of a question to officers, why has this not? But it may end up being recorded as an observation, which I will then ask for it to be noted in the minutes, specifically, please, Chair. I refer to page 103 of 181, and this is paragraph 3. Am I on the wrong paper? I do beg your pardon.
Premature.
Possibility.
Premature papering. Councillor Tilbury.
Page 79 of 181, when we, obviously with the external service providers, obviously with our fund managers and such, like we sort of, they charge us for their knowledge, if you like, and that comes out of the, you know, the return we get. Obviously with that we pay for a service there. Do we have an indication of how much that is? Because obviously there's a danger, you know, I haven't looked at the graph, obviously, where they're sort of tending towards zero very rapidly, that as the amount we get back gets smaller, that the advice we're getting is, you know, you do start to wonder if you actually need the advice. You know, what is the, do we have a cost for that? Obviously there is one, but is that, if that could be reported, because, you know, you could argue that, well, we've got to take advice, but it's handy to know at what point, you know, it's like paying my accountant. I reach the point where you think, well, it's actually cheaper to do it myself. It's,
yeah, I mean, obviously, I can let you know how much we're paying for this advice. I'm not sure whether I can sort of say it on sort of public record, as it were, because obviously we retender every 3 years. But I can certainly send something round if you want to know what the fees are and what the fees are that we're paying KPMG for the monitoring. Yeah, I can get something sent round for members. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions at all? Okay, if that's the case, then we just note the report that's required, and we'll move on to the next paper, which is paper F, Draft Treasury Management Strategy for 2015-16. Dean.
Thank you, Chair. This is paper F. This is the draft Treasury Management Strategy for 2015-16. It comes to you in the form of a draft report to Cabinet, and this report will be finalised this week. But as part of finalising the report, we need to ask the committee to provide their comments on the strategy as part of the sort of consultation on the strategy. Just to give you a sort of an overview of the general direction that we're trying to take with the strategy. As you know, we're now investing in some diversified credit funds, which have sort of added a bit of credit risk into the portfolio. And we're looking, as part of this minor changes to the strategy, trying to balance that credit risk which has been added by taking less risk with the in-house managed element of the portfolio. So looking at doing what we call more vanilla type investments, things like gilts, loans to local authorities and supranational bonds. The other main thing set out in the strategy is the increased risk with unsecured deposits with banks in terms of something that we call the bailing risk, where basically should something go wrong with those banks, we need to make sure that we are as best positioned as we can be in terms of where we are in the pecking order, in terms of creditors, in terms of being able to recover any monies that we've invested. So, as I said, the final report in its final version is due out this week, so I would invite members of the committee to provide their comments on this report, and I'm happy to take any questions on any element of the strategy. Thank you.
So should we start with any questions first on the strategy? Councillor Keating.
I'd be surprised if I didn't have a question. On page 96, item 11.4, I find the definition of over recent years very imprecise, especially in a document which is intended to be precise. And that applies also on 12.5 at the bottom of that page. It talks about and previous years. Again, an imprecision, a lack of precision. But I'm actually not querying it for today. I would just raise it to your attention and ask that we could have some more precision next time round. Thank you.
Any other questions on the paper? Councillor Parker.
First and simple one would be on page 106, when we talk about the credit rating agencies. And I want to just ask of the officers, those credit rating agencies, are they having to operate within any financial authority rules and regulations?
Not that I'm aware of. The companies in question are Standard & Poor's, Fitch Ratings. As far as I'm aware, I don't think they come under the Financial Conduct Authority, but we can try and find out for you if you'd like.
Back in the days when we had the big banking crisis and the banking collapse, there was considerable criticism in relation to the role played by these very agencies in terms of potential interests they may have in relation to the promotion of investment and the sort of failing to sort of read markets correctly. Yet these are the very organisations that we still put a lot of store on in relation to our risk assessment of our investments. So my question then to officers are, what now has given them the feeling that they can now hold these organisations, they can have confidence in the advice and ratings that these organisations are operating?
To be perfectly honest with you, we don't consider, well, in particular, we don't now just look at a credit rating. The credit ratings from these agencies, as you know from Iceland, from previous experience of Icelandics banks, are an indication, and that's all they are. And when we do an assessment looking at whether we should be doing an investment, we would look at beyond the credit rating. That's why we have Arlene Close as our advisors, and they will look beyond the credit rating. They will look at credit default swaps. They will look at the financial press. They will look at lots of other factors, and not just whether they're rated or not by the rating agencies. And I think set out in the strategy report, I think it does say about the sort of move away from us trying to assess the creditworthiness of the investment companies that we're investing in. particularly because you can't, we don't have the expertise to be able to make those sort of credit assessments, and so we're looking to externalise that and let the credit experts deal with those sorts of things, and they won't just be looking at the credit ratings. I think they understand that the credit rating, although it's a mechanical thing that produces those ratings, they understand more about it and will look way beyond the official sort of ratings. So we don't rely solely on those, and we wouldn't rely solely on those. We have to have somewhere in our strategy what we consider to be the lowest level that we would go to, and it just so happens that with the lack of anything other than those credit rating agencies, we've choose a particular level. I think it's A minus. So basically, we're saying we wouldn't do any investment with companies that are rated lower than A minus with those things. But just because they're above A minus doesn't necessarily mean to say we would just accept them because they're above the A minus rating. So we do look at other things, and we do get advice from Highland Close. Having said that, we are moving away from that in the strategy in terms of choosing particular name counterparties.
Councillor Tilbury.
On page 98 of 181, we talk about diversification. Sorry, 13.4, the first bullet point, I suppose. It talks about the existing funds or pool funds which may already be diversified. Well, I think one of the issues that came up with the last financial crash is there have been a lot of diversification, but most of it was to more obfuscation, I think, of all the sort of mortgages that turned out to be for a tin shed basically in Alabama and all that sort of stuff that was going on. And there's a danger there is, if it's too diversified, is how do we have any understanding of what the money's been invested? All right, I know we're leaving it to the experts there, but as we saw with that case, obviously the experts got it hopelessly wrong because they didn't understand what they diversified it into.
Yeah, and what the point we're sort of trying to make there really wasn't about, it was more about the fact that the funds managers will be investing in lots of financial companies, lots of banks across the world, and so they will be spreading the risk, if you like, across a number of banks. So when we look at those funds, we tend to avoid the funds that will be doing the sorts of things that you're talking about. We're primarily looking at those that are investing in investment grade financial institutions. So the diversification comes from having many investments in lots of those different institutions.
Over the page, one of the ones you're looking to take out is the removal of registered social landlords as available counterparties. Whereas I'd have thought they're quite a good bet because basically they got money rolling in through housing benefit, which isn't unlikely to stop anytime soon. It seems an odd one to be taken out because they seem to me to be the same level of risk as local authorities, because they've basically taken all our money, haven't they? They've taken all our housing and they're now getting all the rent on it. So it seems an odd one. If you could sort of explain why that's seen as no risk.
The reason that we've taken those out, that they were put in primarily because when we were looking at our long-term strategic cash review, we were potentially looking at maybe doing some bonds with registered social landlords. But the issue that we had with that is the sort of which ones do we choose? Do we choose? Do we get somebody else to give us advice in terms of which ones that you select? Some of the credit ratings that we've seen from those that have gone and got credit ratings aren't particularly good. Some of the financial, we've got a service where we can go and look at particular companies to see their financial strength, and some of those come out with quite low scores for registered social landlords. So there's a whole sort of range of issues as to why we don't feel investing particularly in bonds with registered social landlords is a route that we wanted to go down. We're sort of more than happy to invest with other local authorities and gilts and supranationals, but we weren't quite so keen on investing with registered social landlords. That's not to say that outside of the treasury management sphere, because we're just looking at cash management, the sort of treasury management side. There's no reason why we couldn't be looking at registered social landlords for other parts of the council's activities.
The other one is, it's obviously not one that's on here. I mean, in the news today, they're talking about the local capital finance company, the Muni bonds, and I think we might have spoke about this some time ago, where obviously they're, from our point of view, most of them are looking at it as a means of raising money there, but obviously they're looking at people to invest in these things there. But the only obvious problem, I haven't looked at it briefly before I came out while you were doing your treasury management, is they're sort of in competition with the Public Works Loan Board there, so the interest rates are quite low. But then, having looked at looking at the graphs, and we seem to be heading into the same territory. That again is almost local authority lending in a different way, but it does have the advantage that they do looking to pay dividends on there. But I appreciate it's an emerging area. But is that something we could possibly consider, or is that sort of other reasons we just couldn't do that, or we wouldn't think about it?
It is something that we could consider. I know that we've been involved in the actual development of it's the Municipal Bond Agency, I think it's called, and we've actually been involved. I know Kevin, the CFO, has been involved with actually getting it off the ground, as it were, and I think they approached us for effectively some sort of pump priming to make an investment to get the thing sort of going. I think we were actually considering, it wouldn't be a lot of money though, so in the terms of scale it's quite a small amount, but it is something that we've been looking at, and obviously we would be interested in terms of looking at that as a potential way of accessing local authorities through different, through them issuing bonds effectively. We have got local authority bonds in the portfolio and they've been there for 20 years. So it's, it isn't something that's alien to us. And the agency is quite useful because the agency will effectively sort of rate local authorities that are using that sort of facility. So it could be a useful tool to us in terms of being able to differentiate between different authorities when we're looking at making investments with local authorities. So it is something we're looking at.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Parker.
On that point, Chair, first of all, I have raised that particular fund previously, and the answer again was that officers were themselves looking into it. I think maybe it would help perhaps if we could have a small report or possibly something that gives us as a committee a better understanding of how the fund operates and whether there's advantages and disadvantages as to whether we could take a decision or put forward a recommendation that on various aspects. Obviously, I understand that we have to look to the chances of maximising investment return, but equally the words prudent come into the requirement of us as a local authority, and I would imagine within this report, comments made about the security of local authority bonds as individual investments. Maybe you would care to support that request.
I think generally that sounds a sensible idea to have that sort of report built in.
The actual agency is still in its sort of embryonic state at the moment. It's not formed. There isn't actually a fund there yet. They're still attracting money from other local authorities, to get the thing off the ground and get the thing running. We've seen some sort of trial information on how they were going to think they're going to rank the bonds in terms of assessing them and for sort of credit worthiness things, but that's as far as it goes at the moment. So there isn't actually anything to report on in the sense of what the fund is and what it's doing and who's in it and who's not in it and what's available. But certainly we could do a report on the progress, if you like, of that as a potential option. But we couldn't really give you much until the fund is actually up and running in terms of what it does, because we're not sure ourselves.
Councillor Bond.
Well, somebody must feel a little bit more confident than we do because they've, I'm assuming, have made an investment. So they must have made that investment themselves on some given criteria.
But in general terms, if can you provide some sort of summary of activity so we know what the progress is with it? Yeah. That's the Keating.
Just to finalise that issue, have we given an indication that we would be prepared to park some money there?
I'm not sure. Kevin's been dealing with it. I know that he did say he was effectively being pressurised to because he was actually involved with the development of it in the first place. So yeah, so it is definitely something that we were considering. But as I said, it's a very small amount relative to the portfolio.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the officers make reference to page 110, paragraph 5.5, which is what appears to me to be the criteria for fund selection. But there's no mention here in relation to, it talks about the criteria would be the size, duration, creditworthiness of the underlying investments income, but there's no reference to the council's approach to ethical investment. Why would that be?
Well, it is actually this is the annual investment strategy, which is how we sort of go about implementing the policy. The actual bit about our approach to ethical investment is set out in detail in the policy document. We could have put that in the it could have been just in the strategy document, not in the policy document, but we felt because it was sort of at quite a high level in terms of wanting to develop an ethical policy, that it should be in the policy document. So it's sort of raised importance, if you like, rather than just in the strategy. But we can repeat that again if you would like us to repeat it within the strategy document. But it is in the suite of documents that the council needs to approve, which is the policy document and the annual investment strategy.
When I started chair on this venture back in 2004, my primary objective was to get a recognition that this local authority, like a lot of other authorities, are prepared to endorse and apply an ethical investment policy. And I understand we've gone through the trial and tribulations of the difficulties of applying it and the impact it may have and so forth. And I note, not with any particular glee, that we do have on page 103, paragraph 3, the council's approach to ethical investment. Now, it's either going to be just a note to the, which in terms, that is the Treasury Management Policy Statement. I can recall probably 3 years ago when this struggle was with us, that I was told that unless you get it on the Treasury Management Policy statement, then that's the thing that guides everything in those terms. It's our policy statement. So now we have it, I believe, all be incorporated as a note to the policy statement. So therefore, I don't see any reason why in the policy strategy there should not be some reference to that policy being in place. We duplicate lots of other things in relation to what our policy might be, and prudent investment, value for money, best value, and those sort of things. And this is talking about fund selection. Now, the statement on 3 makes it quite clear that there are policies that we would expect the fund managers that we choose to be subscribing to. And so therefore, I can't see why there should not be under 5.5, under the criteria for fund selection, that we don't then continue now to start to support. And it's a simple thing, isn't it? It's just reference needs to be made to the council's approach to electric investment. Otherwise, we're either doing it or we're not doing it.
Okay, so we'll request, if anybody has any disagreement with that, but we'll request that it's added to the strategy. Councillor Pearce?
Yeah, I have a similar view to Councillor Parker. And I hope that we do get this ethical committee up again, because I tell you now that I'm not happy with the statement 3.1. I'm not happy with will seek to ensure. I think it should be will not, and it's not difficult. And in fact, when we had the discussion, we noted that there are some very eminent financial writers saying that you can have an equally effective, totally ethically based investment policy, which can be just as rewarding, if that's the right word, as not. And I appreciate it might be difficult with, is it KPMG and Primeco, was it? It was M&G and PIMCO, thank you. I was left with the feeling that they said it was okay, but they probably wouldn't ever be able to deliver on it. So, we do need that to be met again, and I need to go on record that I don't accept that that is not a statement of ethical investments. That's a statement of if we happen to see it, then we'll do it, and that's not acceptable to me.
Any other questions, comments regarding, or questions first regarding the strategy document?
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to page 113, when the risks, etc., are outlined. And I've got one principal question, which is about the one at the bottom of the page, diversified credit funds. Now, you don't need to explain that anymore. I understand that. It's a whole range of different things. But under the listing for risks, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 risks identified, and they're all negative. Mind you, risks are by definition negative. But, you couldn't say that about the rest of them. There's a capital loss risk, there's a credit risk, expertise and resources, and potential volatility. So you're effectively saying, because of your proposition, is that despite all those higher levels of risk, they're still a good bet. Am I correct in reading it that way? Invest in diversified credit funds because they're good enough. Thank you.
as you know, when we went through the strategic review, when we looked at investing in these types of funds, we look at all of the risks, and we accepted that there was an increased risk, credit risk, albeit that would be managed externally by the fund managers. So sort of the increased credit risk requiring expertise, that yes, that is a risk, but that's a managed risk in the sense of the fund manager. That's the sort of thing that the fund managers do. So yes, there is, we accepted that we were taking a different type of risk, and it was, the credit risk rather than the sort of interest rate risk. But the returns for that element of the portfolio, balanced with what we're doing with the rest of the portfolio, was the best mix, if you like, asset allocation that KPMG identified from the review of our strategic investment. So we're acting on sort of their advice. So yes, there appears to be more risks with that in number, and certainly in terms of things like volatility, but those are the risks that we're prepared to take in order to get those returns.
Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Page 112, 5.24, notes the existence of the Council's local authority mortgage scheme. And from what I read on that paragraph, short that it is that I suppose it's really saying that whilst we now recognise, as we've had just today through our training, the higher risk of having bank deposit investments, that we will continue to allow these to remain invested as long as they are part of our local authority mortgage scheme. So what I wanted to ask was, what is the current situation in relation to how much we have invested in that scheme, and how long are we now committed for that money to remain, and whether we can exit quickly in any manner or not? What is the actual position on that? Because under this new heading that we have, which I've forgotten what it was, paid outs or bailouts or bail-ins, this is now a bail-in investment, I assume.
Yes, it is. In the previous paper, paper E, we set out all of the investments that the council holds on page 83 of 181. And in there we have the, somewhere in there, we must have the local authority limbs. About halfway down the page, we've got fixed deposits with banks. We've got Bank of Scotland, which was 2nd of February 2015, so that's come back today, and we've got Lloyds Bank Lambs scheme, so there's £1 million which was invested with Lloyds as part of that scheme, and you can see that that's due to expire or mature on the in January 2018, so it's a 3-year investment. It's a fixed investment, so it's not something we can just say, well, we don't want to be part of that anymore. Legally, we can't do that.
Would we then not be making a statement that in view of the new banking risk criteria, that whilst we're allowing existing to remain, would we not in our strategy then confirm that we won't be venturing any more money in that area?
Yes, I'm not sure of what the policy is on that, because although it's in this report, because technically it is a deposit with a bank, the actual process of determining whether the council takes part in that scheme wasn't done as part of the treasury management. It was done as part of a service housing objectives. So it just so happens that it ends up in this treasury management report because of the nature of the way that they structured the way they were going to assist with these mortgages, was that we would effectively do a deposit with the bank, and they would then guarantee the deposits for people to buy houses. So it's sort of a bit like when we had 3EN, and then we ended up with MWR Company, and they were shares. So it was a service-based thing that ended up a financial sort of investment, if you like, by default. So it's not something that under the Treasury Management's policy or strategy we would ever say we want to do some more LAMs as an investment per se. So if the council were to do more of this, it would be outside of the Treasury Management sphere. But my understanding is that the scheme is actually finished anyway, so there won't be any more investment in this particular scheme.
Is that something that's been shared with members then, or is it known to officers on that basis? I mean, I must have maybe just missed this. I mean, I appreciate the clarification that you've steered me to on page 83, which I'm note that it's we've got to just sort of go on till 2018. My concern is that maybe I'm expecting more of this document than is there, but I did think that we had a strategy where we were saying there were things we wouldn't be maybe necessarily investing in. We talk about minimum requirement in relation to security of investment and that sort of thing. We've had this training. Now, if this is, and I appreciate the politics might come into this, and you're not responsible for that, but this is, I'm approaching this purely and simply as a member of this committee. And if I've had training that tells me deposit investments of any kind, effectively, as far as our level is concerned, is likely to be unsecured to the extent that this 33% factor raised from 8%, then somewhere along the line I would want to see some directive from our financial officers that say this ain't any good anymore. Not recommended to be repeated or renewed.
Yeah, as I said, the scheme isn't in operation anymore. So I can put down there that we won't be doing any more, but we wouldn't anyway because the scheme doesn't exist. But it is something that we need to bear in mind when we're looking at any ways that we finance particular service schemes that we might be bringing in. I know they're looking in housing at different ways of accessing or acquiring properties for homelessness, and we need to look at those setups and see and make sure that there aren't any of that type of just a direct investment with a bank and then we get some interest, or so we need to look at all of those sort of schemes to make sure that we aren't exposing ourselves to the bailing risk that the Treasury Management Strategy talks about.
No, I'm certainly not wishing to influence what you say, Dean, in that sense, if you feel yourself. I'm asking you that question. If you're sufficiently confident that it doesn't need to have a note drawing reference to the fact that it is a form of investment that we wouldn't normally maybe expect to reinvest in. I'm not asking you to I'm not wanting to put words in the document that you're, I just find, I'm trying to correlate this with the training we've just had, and I think I'll leave it there, Chair. I mean, I when they say it's not functioning, it's running because we've got money invested in it. I mean,
but it's not.
We might not be putting any,
It's not going.
It's still ongoing. Yes.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. I just want clarification, Dean, if I may. On 112.521, and you mentioned it earlier that we used, it says here, we use banks and building societies with a credit rating of A-. Why would we bother with A- and not start with AA?
There are very few banks that are AA. I believe there's only one.
Is that right?
I think, is it one? There's only one on our list, which is HSBC, which happen to be our bankers, fortunately. So you know, if you in the past we used to have a limit that was AA, and as the majority of banks have been downgraded as a result of the financial crisis, we've had to effectively lower the limit, if you like. But that's because the rating agencies have progressively lowered the ratings for the majority of the banks, and we basically went for a level which at the time included all of the banks that our advisors told us were effectively systemically important to the financial markets, and that if anything went wrong with those big banks, then the government would step in and make sure that they didn't fail. So that level of A- was the level that made sure that it included all of those systemically important banks. And some banks have, some of the big high street banks have fallen down below that level, and they've been taken off of our list. So our list is sort of shrinking. So, at some point you've got to say, well, we need to look beyond that, or we stop doing investments with banks.
Councillor Tilbury.
Just to come back to Stuart's point on the local authority mortgage scheme, I think effectively it was superseded by the government's Help to Buy scheme, because I think we were actually looking at putting more money into it at that time, and that scheme came along and covered it anyway. But the point is, I think as sort of Dean suggested, it's not wouldn't fall ordinary treasury management, because it's incredibly high risk, because I was actually on the committee at the time, recall that, because it only covered the it's the top slice part, isn't it? The part that normally people couldn't get a mortgage on, that they would have to take an insurance policy, and we were covering that because the banks were saying it's too risky. We won't lend these people the money, but if you pay the risk part of it there, we will do it. So in terms of, we were doing it for other reasons. The idea was to get more people to be able to buy a house, but in terms of treasury management, it was a seriously, because potentially all the money was at risk. But I mean, hopefully it'll work out. But it was, in that respect, it wasn't done for treasury. If we were doing it to raise money, it was a one-way bet to lose, basically, wouldn't it? But hopefully we won't, and we should get most of our money back. Hopefully all of it, even.
Thank you. Any other questions at all? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go to page 114, which is the table referring to the limits for each type of investment. And I'm just, I can't quite work it out. And, it was getting right towards the end of a lot of facts and figures with the whole agenda. Where it says under Bank and Building Society repurchase agreements, it talks about maximum limits, percentage of portfolio, where it says 25 million. And note 2, which is against it, includes a 20 million limit on each foreign country, which seems, I can't see how that would be so high as 20 million, where we're looking at a maximum of 25 million that we'd invest in that area.
This is looking at potentially repurchase agreements, which could be with foreign banks. They could be the counterparty is a foreign bank, but they might put up collateral which are government gilts or supranational bonds. So it's basically just to allow us enough scope that if we needed to, we might have 3 or 4 of these with foreign banks. So we just need to have some sort of limit, if you like, because we won't use foreign banks for the other elements. So it's basically just so that there is a limit on the use of foreign banks, or a country limit, if you like, effectively, so you're not putting too many of your eggs in one country.
Well, that's what I'm querying, because effectively, unless I'm getting it totally wrong, we're saying that we would only allow 25 million in total. But we would be quite prepared then to allow an investment of 20 million into one foreign country. And therefore, I would like to suggest, and I would then make the comment to committee, I consider that 20 million is too high a figure.
Just so Dean, for a second, for clarity, you're saying that 20 million into one country, of which there will be a number of repurchase agreements, which potentially. So the limit is not on the country. It's not saying it's a single investment. It's a multiple investment potentially into one territory.
Yeah, I could understand that if we were going to invest 100 million or something like that. In terms of the percentage of the total available to be invested, my colleague here just quietly made the comment that, you know, we're very grateful that country where, yes, we could have various different pods of investment within that country. Thankfully, it's not Greece. I just think it's actually doesn't need to be that high, and I don't understand why. And I think that should be looked into and questioned by the committee in return in the sense of what is prudent. I don't think that's prudent.
Councillor Shearer.
Could be the UK, presumably, as well. The one country could be the UK.
We're not foreign.
Oh, that's fine. Well,
I mean, the whole purpose of these limits are not to say that we're going to go out and do 20 million. It's so that we have a limit in terms of, you know, what we can do, and that particular type of investment it's one small part of the portfolio potentially. As it turns out, we haven't actually got any of those investments at the moment, but we could be looking at those, and there will only be, you know, there won't be that many of them there in the market, and it may be that we're looking at, it could be that we're looking at American bank ones, it could be that we're looking at Swedish or whatever, and you know, potentially, because we might they come in sort of fairly big chunks, so you're probably looking at £5 or £10 million when you're doing one of these investments. So potentially we could have sort of 4 with one particular foreign country up to. So, you know, we could have set the limit at 25 and just said, well, there's a maximum of 25 on that type of investment, and potentially that could all be in one country. But you know, we're sort of saying, well, we think because foreign countries, we'll have a smaller limit. So we'll go for 20 million rather than 25.
Councillor Parker.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think ultimately I will give up on this, but I'm going to just persist for the moment. My understanding of investment in basic, very general terms is spread is good. Because the option there is that you don't get, if you want to invest in a portfolio of shares, invariably your stockbroker's advice is different sectors, and within those sectors a spread of different organisations. In other words, don't put all your money in the one box. Again, what I'm saying, in my point I'm making, I understand limits. That's why we have the limits. We have those limits to give as a safeguard in relation to what turns out in reality. And as Dean has just said, we could go to America. Well, under the this criteria here, then 20, unless I'm reading this wrong, 20 million of our set aside 25 million could be invested in America. And I don't think that's actually right. And I see no reason why we shouldn't, therefore, at these levels, be talking, yes, in terms of 5 million, maybe should be the maximum we could invest in one country in this particular sector. Now, if now we can have the, you know, an explanation that everyone else is happy and comfortable with, Chair, then I stand down. But for me, this doesn't seem to sit right.
Can we just deal with this issue before we move on to the next one? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I understand what's being said for a change. As a layperson in money terms, I'd simply propose we adopt a 10 million limit in each foreign country. End of story. Thank you.
For the purposes of our requirements for the meeting, we are asked to note the report and make any comments, and we can add that into the comments that we want to make. The comment is that
The comment would be that you can only invest 20 million pound in one foreign country because there's only 25 million pound available, right? So I would suggest.
No, could you clarify that then, please? Put yours off. Put yours off. This is what we need.
Sorry, just to clarify, if you look in that table, the note 2 applies to bank and building society repurchase agreements, but it also applies to bank overnight call accounts. So there's actually 40 million, and what we're saying is there's a 20 million limit on foreign countries. So that is half of that element of the portfolio. Clearly, there's 150 million in the portfolio, so 20 million in foreign countries is a lot smaller proportionately. The 20 million limit is in the current strategy, in this year's strategy, and we do actually have, if you look in our investments, we do actually have foreign banks. We have money with Handelsbanken, so it's not something that's being added in to the portfolio. It's always been there, but I accept if you feel, for whatever reason, that we shouldn't have that amount of money with a foreign country, or in banks of a foreign country, or investments in a foreign country, then obviously you're entitled to your opinion. But obviously, we're looking at the practicalities, if you like, of implementing our sort of treasury function, and if we were to take out all the majority of the foreign countries, then we're restricting ourselves even more in terms of where we can actually place this money.
I just would say one word, and that's Iceland.
so. I think the where we are. First of all, does the committee overall feel that there is a degree of risk which is unacceptable within the way that this is laid out in this document? Is that a feeling of the committee overall? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So from that point of view, absolutely, we're noting this, and now we can just make a comment that we feel that the risk is too high as it's laid out, and that's the way it is. Yeah.
Just one more thing to add on that. You said Iceland. Yeah, but if you look at our policy on the use of foreign investment, it does say we won't invest unless the country has a rating of AA. Now, there aren't that many countries that have AA plus. Sorry, there aren't that many countries that have a AA plus rating. The UK is one of them, but there aren't that many. So we wouldn't be looking at Greece or Spain or Italy or any of those countries. We are looking at the more highly rated countries when we're looking at these foreign investments. So we don't perceive the risk to be as risky as you might think it is.
Thank you. Any other comments that anybody would like to bring up that we can discuss that might be to add to the response? So the requirement for this is to note it, which we have done. In terms of the comments, the single comment which seems to have exercised most is regarding the risk regarding the foreign country investment. Yeah. So we need to put together a form of whether it's just that we are commenting negatively on the way that the risk is assessed here, and therefore anything or nothing. We're just commenting.
I think we're not criticising anybody. I think we're simply stating that we would be much more comfortable as members of the Audit Committee if the potential for investment in foreign countries started with a limit of 10 million instead of 20, full stop. We would be much more comfortable with. And we would hope that that would be taken into account. Simple as that.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm much happier now that it's AA plus. That's what you said, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't appreciated that, so I'm quite happy with it as it is. Yeah.
Does anybody else feel that the AA plus changes their opinion or not?
Well, you can have a country that's got a rating of AA plus. That's now. You know, we don't control the fortunes of individual countries. And these investments, are they short term or medium term or long term? In terms of how, let's just have a quick discussion or a clarification on what we're talking in terms of whether they're 1 year, 1 to 5 year, or.
The particular investments that you mentioned in that table, partly they're overnight or call accounts, so they're sort of instant access accounts, and partly would be these repurchase agreements. Those type of investments we potentially will only be looking to do them up to 1 year. So they're what we call in the short term range of investment anyway. You know, we wouldn't be looking to do long-term investment in foreign countries, other than through the use of EIB bonds, supranational bonds.
Well, certainly, I pick up on the point Councillor Sherlock makes, is that the clarification of the country rating does change. Even in my view, I'm quite happy to even confirm that. And if the officer believes that reducing that limit effectively could nullify the potential for appropriate investment in terms of, you know, if we went to the sort of figure I was talking of, 5 million, Councillor Keating said 10, if it had a really, in his view, a really negative impact in the possibilities of prudently maximising return on that type of investment, then in view of that clarification, I know we've had a painful discussion, but Chair, I believe that's what this committee is all about. We can all come here and say, yes, we note, but this is what being an audit committee, in my view, is one of the purposes of it. A better understanding of what we're doing and clarification by officers that now satisfy, and I will effectively then say I'm not insisting a change.
Me too.
Fine. There are, within the minutes, the comments have been raised as well, so that will be fine. Sorry.
How are you
No. Basically, are you talking about the report? I mean, we've noted the report, and there are some comments which have been raised in discussion, which will be minuted, which can be given to you for your clarification and understanding. We're not asking for any additional change to the fundamental report as it's been presented to us. And no, and we're commenting positively that we're pushing that, saying, fine, we have discussed and debated that report, and it can go forward as it is. So moving on to paper G, internal audit progress report for September to December 2014. Richard. A 2-minute break, literally 2 minutes. So back to business. Yes, thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, paper G is the progress report for the work of the internal audit team, the work that we've been doing between the period of September to December 2014. You'll see from the appendices, number 2 through to 10. There's nine reports for work that we've done, and as their attachments, and obviously they are summarised in the table on 4.3 of my report, as I've done for the last couple of reports now, showing the overall level of assurance and the number of recommendations as per for each audit. Also in my report, on paragraph 4.4 is the overdue fundamental recommendations, which I'm happy to sort of report that that number is coming down. There's only three remaining, which is very good. And then Appendix 1 to my report shows the summary of the overdue recommendations, not the significant recommendations. The final appendix on the report shows for information all the current recommendations that are outstanding but not yet overdue. They're there for your reference. Just as a general comment, it's quite reassuring as an auditor to see from the reports that we've done this year, for this quarter, the number of full and substantial assurances that we've given. I think we've seen a general rise in the standard of levels of assurance, particularly in the ones for this period where it's covering like IT, HR, Treasury, and housing benefits, where we've given like full or substantial. I think it's very reassuring. But I'd obviously happy to take questions which you probably got on some of those areas.
Councillor Keating.
First of all, Chair, can I apologise? I will have to leave here at 5 o'clock, irrespective of where the meeting will be at that point. Secondly, can I say, I've been receiving these reports now consistently and for a considerable period of time. And I'm beginning to perceive a willingness for the local management to decide for themselves whether or not they will give priority to introducing change as a result of an audit review. I'm also concerned, Chair, that there is no obvious direct link between the performance of the department and the senior management team, SMT, and there is no direct link either to the portfolio holder. Can I just say why I say these things? For example, can I just say, under the first category is with property maintenance. And our property maintenance has been a consistent, regular feature of audit reports of recent years. They have, without a doubt, had a need for more management and more information technology arrangements that has not yet been introduced. It's getting there, they're getting there, but they're not getting, or they haven't had, the either the investment or the portfolio support to change things sufficiently to warrant them fixing the problems. Because the consistent report that we get from property maintenance is that they need a proper computer system. I don't know what you might call that system, but they do need a proper computer system, which is comprehensive in terms of their assets and maintenance and all the other things. So I say that because it appears that local management or senior management team or the portfolio holder, I don't mean the operators on the ground. The operators on the ground can't do anything because the senior management team are not giving them the support or the resources, or the portfolio holder is not giving them the support or resources. So I find it easy to identify that they're failing, and the audit committee, the auditors would undoubtedly not put it in that phraseology, and I accept that and understand that. But I don't want to criticize the people that are operational on the ground who are laboring under inadequate support or resources. I find that difficult. Secondly, management information, for example, I believe that it's an investment issue and a timing issue, not a we will fail because. So I do believe that whereby the audit report comes out saying there are fundamental or substantial issues or significant issues that haven't been addressed, that should go to SMT first. And we should get a response from SMT before it arrives here, what's happening and what's being done. Because we can't anticipate what will happen or what might be done, but I can anticipate that property maintenance will be on the list again, and so will IT, because it's been on the list again consistently. So with that premise, can I now just turn to the number of points I wanted to make?
You have to leave at 5.
I'll be finished long before that.
That's good.
I will.
So do you have some questions? I appreciate your comment.
I'll have
We're
some
asking for
comments,
questions.
On Appendix 1, we're talking about page 1 of 2. Oh, I have to get...
So it follows page 125.
It's 126, right? The audit report on this particular bit of work was completed in October 2013. Now I know we're just into 2015, but it's beginning to get to the point whereby the target date has been missed. The target date was effectively 14 months after the audit report. It's been missed, and we have a consistent comment. Now, I know the manager involved, by the way, and I'm not making a direct immediate criticism of the manager. I'm talking about the system here. We have told Audit that due to the decision to enter into a shared service, in other words, the audit report identifying serious concerns has been put to one side by a subsequent decision to change the service. Now, I find that unacceptable. As an audit committee member, if the audit report 14 months ago says you need to sort these things out, I shouldn't hear, in my view, in February 2015, we haven't completed the change because we decided in the meantime to share service with someone. There should be fixing the problem first and then sharing service with a fixed service. That's point number 1. I don't need you to comment.
Sorry, Councillor Geeding. We're all taking questions. I mean, I appreciate. Is there a specific question?
Well, you may be asking questions. I'm making comments. Okay.
I'd like to get questions through around the committee first to see if, rather than that.
And at 5+5, I'll come in with my comments. Okay.
Fine.
After I'm gone.
Fine. Are there any direct questions that we need to do with Councillor Pearce?
I think I understand what Sean is saying. And I was quite bemused by these on 126 and 127. I was surprised, really, that in terms of grants to organisations, are you all right? You wouldn't know where I am?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of grants to organisations, that, you know, this stuff's been bashed around. There's been a cog. There's been disputed recommendations out of that cog. And these things are still outstanding. And are we really saying that grant applications over the past 2 years weren't bona fide because this seems to me that there were things that weren't happening that should have been happening? Yeah, please. I have more.
No, we're definitely not saying grants over the last 2 years, you know, not bona fide. Obviously, we do our sample testing then we base our results on the sample of grants that we look at. We have been working very closely with the head of commissioning governance on this, and she has been, I have to say, has been very proactive in making sure that these recommendations are completed. We do have, for the end of this month, we have another grants audit scheduled as agreed with the head of commissioning, because now they've now adopted the new process. One of the big issues when we did the audit last year was they were looking to implement the new process, which we knew. Obviously, we were only auditing on the process which was in existence at the time. This new process, I understand, is now complete. They've gone through the application process and they're doing the assessments of these applications now, and that's what we'll be reviewing next month in our audits. So when we do the audit report, which I hopefully will be reporting on in June, we will see a significant improvement. These recommendations will be removed. Will be completed. They will be removed because they've been completed, and we hopefully the audit findings from the new process will be significantly improved on what we reported on last year. So yes, there were flaws, fundamental ones, as you know, but hopefully we will see an improvement.
I am pleased to hear that. I mean, that is in the light of a staffing increase over the last 2 years of pushing £500,000 into that particular department. So I think we have to take, the overall view that really shouldn't have happened. My next question, 8.1 HR and payroll. Do you really mean October 2104, or is that is a typing error, isn't it? Okay. Just to prove we do read the papers, really. Can I move to developers' contributions? Can you explain this to me? Just over the page, on audit reference 610 on page 127 of 181, and it's the top. The PCTO, mnemonics haven't been around for that long, but I've no idea what that is.
The PCTO is the proactive compliance technical officer, the officer who is responsible for the Section 106 agreements and the administration. That's who that post is.
I suppose the issue really is that the original target date for completion was the 30th of June. It's a significant category of risk. It was done in March, and whoever it is talking about having a meeting on the 4th of February. That seems to be something that we shouldn't be accepting, and it should not have happened that way, if now I understand what PCTO is.
I must admit, in that officer's defence, there is a huge amount of responsibility and work on that particular officer. It is one of those things that the day job takes over, and priorities mean that those sort of things don't get done as we would like, as we originally agreed. Within that audit, there were a lot of other recommendations, significance and merits attention ones that have been completed. This is just one that through resource and workloads, they just haven't got around to doing. But we are confident, yes, that meeting will take place and it will be resolved.
I suppose my natural conclusion, and looking at some of these...
Ask me a question, however.
Yeah, well, I'm allowed to preempt and paint a picture so that I can... my friends on the other side of the table will understand what I'm talking about. It looks rather to me like, irrespective of a staffing increase in commissioning, and what your comment about, and this is not directed at you, by the way, your comment about the day job taking over, it does indicate to me that we are lacking in human resources. We haven't got enough people to complete the job. And can I just move back to the question of, there wasn't much detail, but the question of property maintenance. Is it our intention to purchase a piece of software that enables that to be properly monitored? In previous jobs I've worked for a facilities management company, and I've also operated 3 or 4 different pieces of technology. I guess the only expense in it is if you use a code reader and you put a code on every asset. But is it intended that we're going to buy some software so that this can be done properly, because it is an effective way of doing it? And secondly, and I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this, my second point is, do we have a proper planned maintenance program, or do we fix on fail as a general rule?
You referred just now to tagging of assets. I mean, are you referring there for like furniture and stuff? Because that is kind of a different area, because there is a project which will be in place. Kevin will no doubt have more detail than myself. There is a project to implement a new property system for our assets, and I believe a project manager has been appointed. It is a long-term project, as you will fully appreciate. We'll be looking at, I presume, some kind of integrated system finance processes as well, because at the moment there is one of the things that audits have highlighted. You have 2 separate systems running. You have property running, you have finance running their own systems, and where you have disparate systems working increases the risk of error occurring. So there is a project, to answer your question on that issue. Yes. Completion dates, I must admit, the recommendations which we've got relating to the property system, we have, as you will see from Appendix 11, have been pushed back to 2016, because that coincides with the intention of the completion of that project.
I don't think I was necessarily thinking about tagging things like furniture, and you're already tagging laptops and stuff. But I was thinking that, you might, forgive me, but you might tag every radiator, every lighting holder, it's extensive. But the impact of it is that when the operative comes and does something, it's, as you rightly say, it immediately fed into the finance system and an order created if there's a part needed. So, there's levels of sophistication you can go to quite deeply. But yeah, 2016 seems a long way away, and again, I suggest that's because of lack of resources. That was the moment, Chair.
Kevin, did you want to add anything?
I can, Chair, as the head of service here, I think I probably ought to. In terms of, is there an intention? Yes. I mean, there was a note circulated, I think, to the committee on property management information system a while back, just following the previous meeting. But yes, the intention is there to get a system in place. The level of sophistication for the property maintenance is, needs to be spec'd. Whether it will be quite as comprehensive as you were suggesting, I'm not so sure. But certainly an integration and part of the property system will need to cover property maintenance in a more systematic way. So yes, there is an intention to get that system purchased and up and running. In terms of resources, we have. And I have looked at the structure in the property team, and part of the reason that it hasn't moved as quickly as I think we all would have liked is that we needed to restructure the team into 2 clearer areas, and then we needed to populate the team, and we've had staff turnover, and it's a difficult market out there. So I'm well aware of those issues. As a manager, I'm attempting to address those with some success and some limited success so far in terms of timing, but very well aware of what we need to do, and we have the financial resource for the system. We have appointed a project manager, and we are now doing the selection and procurement. So yes, to the system. Councillor Keating's point about resourcing, yes, I'm aware of that, and we've tried to address that. These things, as your members will be aware, do take time to do. You can't just immediately restructure, refit people and appoint. We need to go through a process. So we are looking at that. And just sorry, one more thing. I just wanted to say, in terms of we do have a planned maintenance program for significant assets, and we have a reactive maintenance. So the day-to-day firefighting is the reactive. There is a planned maintenance program. The budget for next year, subject to member approval in February, includes some funding for renewal and refreshing of some of those asset management condition surveys. So for some of our assets, we need to refresh the 20-year condition surveys, and there's some funding being requested in the budget to assist with that. So hopefully that gives a bit more context, Chair.
Now that the door's been opened, thank you, Chair. I was aware of the changes in the property services, and I've been aware of it for a number of years, and I understand what's happening and why it's happening. But I started off by saying there was a disconnect between us receiving a report saying this is wrong and it hasn't been fixed, because that's really what we've been told. And I'm not saying someone's at fault, but I'm saying this is wrong and that hasn't been fixed. And sometimes it's 6 months, 12 months, and in one case it's nearly 18 months. The disconnect is we don't get the related report from the manager or head of service, which saying, and we're fixing it, by the way. Do you see what I mean? We don't get it connected here. So we get the report. This is wrong. Now comment on it, right? You comment on it, and the head of service comes along and says, "Oh, we're fixing that." Like it's the equivalent of saying, "Well, we got a problem, and we won't tell you what we're doing about it, but you can comment." It would really be helpful, and especially on those things whereby there is change happening in the department or on the subject matter, because senior management teams should be monitoring these things, and I assume they do. Am I right in assuming that?
Yes, Chair, you're right. I mean, they're monitored in individual departments and at an SMG level. So yes, management is looking at the recommendations. Sorry, just in terms of the approach we've previously discussed. Obviously, what people are proposing to do about the audit recommendations are in the audit report under the agreed actions. If the updates, if the committee wants further explanation, just raise this. The thing what we discussed before was that the committee would say, well, actually, we'd quite like to hear from X head of service or X manager to explain where they're at and what the issues are, and we could arrange for that to occur. And we did that, and members asked for that on the property system, I seem to recall. We went through what had been done and what was still to be done. So I thought that was the way that the committee was going to approach this, to say, well, actually, if you look at these and say, actually, we want to know more from the head of service or the relevant manager on this, that the committee would notify the chair or at this meeting, and we would arrange that for a future meeting. That was all, Chair.
I'm conscious that something's missing from this meeting, Chair, and I thought it was agreed at the start of the new season, if you like, that a cabinet member would come and present reports. Now, I'm saying this now because I sort of get the feeling that the officers may be well thinking, well, why don't that bloke shut up, because it's not fair and he doesn't understand, and it's directed at them.
Usually me.
Well, I've reserved judgment on that one. It is most certainly is nothing to do with performance of staff. But what I am concerned about, it's just dawned on me, is that we've just gone through 3 or 4 major reports. We're going through another one now, and the cabinet member is nowhere to be seen. And I think he should be here, and I think he should be presenting these reports as the Constitution Working Party agreed would happen.
Well, obviously the committee can make that comment about the attendance of the cabinet member. I wasn't really going to pass comment on that, as that's for members to pass comment. So you would expect me to pass comment on that. Other than to say that the presentation of reports by cabinet members are not the case where they are technical officer reports. So there will be I'm not passing any comment about attendance or otherwise of the portfolio holder, but I don't think it would be anticipated that the portfolio holder would present a technical treasury management report or a technical audit report. But that was all.
I can't answer that. I just think, as the meeting's gone on, I think this is a bit naff. The person responsible, politically isn't here. I'll leave that with you, Chair, I think.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to hear that SMT and the other mnemonic are monitoring what's happening. And it's incredibly important if you have significant or fundamental issues raised in audit that they should be addressed and addressed in a timely manner. And I get the impression, and I've been doing this now for many years, I get the impression that managers are beginning to take the attitude, well, we'll get round to them when we feel like it. That's the impression, right? I mean, and I think that that's the wrong message to be giving the audit committee. That's the wrong message. And if senior management are investigating these fundamental and significant risks, and they're doing it before audit committee meet, because you're hardly going to wait for audit committee to meet in 3 months' time, then it would help enormously to have a short, sharp, simple statement or whatever attached to the relevant audit report about SMT has looked at the issue, they understand that this is what's happening and this is what we're doing about it. That would help enormously, because it would stop me having to read every damn line every time, because very often it's the same issue, same department. Thank you. Shut up there, Chair. Because there's a limit to how much time I'm to spend saying the same thing.
Would the committee feel that it would benefit within these audit actions to have some sort of column in here which is much more directly orientated towards what the management plan is to update this?
Chair, I mean, yes, I mean that's a great idea, isn't it? I just think it, having been in the public sector and years ago, and now this is the public sector, I'm just slightly concerned about publicly being seen to have audit recommendations which are substantial in some cases, not being acted upon for 18 months. And so if we can do something about that, I think that's a good thing. All it does is give ammunition to those outside the public sector to say we can do it better, and we've got enough of that. Thank you very much.
Is there some way that in this latest update, it doesn't really, to me, say a great deal about what is happening within a line project to develop a solution for it? Is there some way of at least providing some input which says that the relevant management are doing something by so and so date? That's their objective. Nothing doesn't need to be anything huge. It just says so that we don't have to keep, and we can come back to it afterwards and say this is what's going to happen.
What we ask the latest update, as you know, we chase these recommendations on a monthly basis, and they're outstanding. And for every one of these that is overdue, there is a large number that is completed within time. Coming back to point about officers or managers not giving it priority. 5 years ago when I started, I would probably agree with you. But there is a shift that the managers are aware that their comments that are recorded in this latest update do go to audit committee. So we do ask them to put in there something that makes it clear as to why this recommendation is overdue. I actually thought the update here given by the head of governance commissioning kind of sort of said it as it currently is, and I struggle to see how or what more could be provided at this point in that particular column. The officers do.
I think my point is that when you see a cut and paste of a number of columns, then immediately you think, actually, yeah, it's easy to say in a cut and paste what I've said before.
I refer my colleagues.
And that's where I think, as a committee, I think there's a point which says, well, some of these are becoming extremely, they're causing concern, but we're not feeling the balance of concern is being addressed. Now, I'm sure it is, because we see many things being changed and the number of substantial issues reducing. That is absolutely for sure. But within that, even with these outstanding, they are outstanding for such a long period of time that the committee obviously feels that there isn't even if there is the drive, it's not being achieved. And sometimes it's how can we help? It is about what can we do? So that's where I think the committee is coming from with this. If I'm wrong, please feel free. Sorry, I think Councillor Schiller wanted. But let's go. I'll give you an opportunity. I did jump on what you were saying. I don't know if you wanted to finish what you were saying first.
No, it was just really just to try and give the audit support to the officers and the managers. That the process is we have refined it over the last few years as the committee is fully aware, to try and make it as transparent as possible and to get the senior management members involved. The summary reports which you see in my appendix as appendices to my report do go to the relevant corporate director or chief executive for their information, and we do get feedback from them. Admittedly, their comments usually it will be a thank you. We note the report if it's a full assurance. Sometimes if it's reasonable or limited, they do say we note this and note the actions of the relevant head of service will be acted upon. But beyond, but there is admittedly, there's no evidence of that in my report. This is a summary report. And I'm trying to keep it as succinct as possible, and we kind of feel at the moment the latest update from the manager concerned is the best thing to give the committee for information. If you wish that to be changed, fair enough.
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to suggest that, we can I can certainly take back and we can discuss it, SMG, and then cascade it as necessary. That what the committee is after is a bit more context sometimes for those updates. And I think if we could leave it a bit vague like that, and then you see what comes back next time. If it doesn't address the type of thing you're talking about for where there are overdue recommendations is where we're talking about. So you may well get the comment from the particular person, but you might get where there is an understanding point on page 126 or whatever it was, where you have a range all relating to the one audit. Potentially there could be a couple of paragraphs about how that was all being taken forward together. So I think we can look at if we can make those updates a bit more meaningful, but I'll need to take that back to colleagues and discuss that.
In all the years I've sat in audit has improved its reporting to us exceptionally well. And it is now at a point, I believe, where the audit cannot improve what they're doing, because I think they're doing a good job. The other thing that I've noticed over the years is that the number of difficulties that have been highlighted are smaller. There's a smaller number, but we're keen to improve that further, and I'm keen not to ensure that we don't just receive reports and just do nothing about it. And if a senior management team can't put a line in, then they need more staff too. Thank you.
I'm sure when I joined this committee a few years ago, there were reams of pages of outstanding stuff. And I think it's a remarkable achievement of what's been done so far. And I'm very happy with Kevin's suggestion of a slightly improved report. I mean, it doesn't look good, the copy and paste job, I must admit. But overall, I think there's wonderful improvement.
I wasn't suggesting for 1 minute it was not as Councillor Sherlock outlines.
Councillor Parker.
one of the problems here is that this is a very detailed report. There's a lot of information, and all too often, if I may say, Chair, and this is down to the prerogative of the Chair, this report is invariably at the end of a very busy agenda. Because everybody's looking at the time. We've got members who are now saying they need to be going home. And I think possibly we don't have time equally to give the report the justice that it requires.
I think the point you make is quite valid, and certainly I didn't realise how we can change the agenda next time so that the issues of audit do actually appear higher up rather than laterally in the agenda.
I think that would be fair to the officer presenting this information to this committee. But my experience, I've got to say, in relation to the work being carried out by audit, and we need to recognise the valuable role of this function in the safeguarding of the business that we're in as a local authority. But more and more we seem to be given the impression, and it is my impression, and I've mentioned this to the boredom of other committee members, not only in this committee but other committees that I'm a member of, we need to acknowledge we are suffering resources and staff shortages. We get this when we talk to officers about casework. We get this when we are seeing the feedback from individual unit managers, specific reference to this is delayed because the head of service is not available or is away, and these sort of things. And so this isn't just, we can't keep on highlighting possibly shortcomings of our workforce. We need to be maybe aiming our comments towards the executive officers of this local authority. They're the ones that make these decisions, how many people are staffing. We've gone through these various reviews. As individual councillors, we know there are now senior management level officers who once were looking after one department and are currently probably running three. And at some stage we come to a situation where this just isn't going to work anymore. So I wonder sometimes, I would imagine Richard, and I'm not putting you on the spot and I don't want any comment, I make that in his presence and I would make it in his absence, must sometimes wonder what it's all about here, because the team are doing excellent work and we sometimes get comments where his team is organising what seems to me to be a very fundamental requirement, and again I highlight, and it seems funny that we hone in on the same department, grants to organisations, where the grant application process should include checks for potential duplication of funding, and the comment is our current process does not require this. It's the starter, that's the starter of the but can be incorporated into the review of the system. So what we're hearing is we're not actually going to take any action to what seems to be a very sensible audit requirement. We're going to review that. Maybe we'll put that into our review. So it's going further backwards. The workload is going further backwards, and I really don't want to say a great deal more. We could go through every single page here picking up on points, Chair, but I actually don't think that's going to be productive until the senior officer pick up the fact that maybe a lot of the managers of the departments and workers in those departments, I think, are struggling to cope with the workload. But I congratulate Richard and his team on the work they do. I think it's essential, and I think it's from the points raised that they all make sense, and some of them incredibly are very fundamental, and I don't see they should take so much time to get resolved.
Any other questions or comments on the report, Councillor Tilbury?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of skipped over the current recommendations, not overdue as of the 31st of the 12th. But while we've been going through this, I've sort of looked at, if you go to page 176 it must be, property rents. There's one there, the original audit was the 31st of March 11, and that's the reason it's not overdue is it's going to be revised to 2 years' time now. It's been bumped forward, but if you look at the bottom one where the replacement of the manual ledger that records rent review periods is, I can recall that coming up when I first joined the predecessor to this committee, the predecessor of the committee, went to the old Finance and Accounts Review panel. That's it, yeah, that's it. That was about when I first became a councillor, so in about 2003-4, and it was I can't remember who the head of property services was then, it's so long ago, but everything was in a little black book, and of course that caused problems because they were forgetting, it came up because some rent reviews had been forgotten because they hadn't consulted the book. It was, but the fact that that still seems to be in existence is a bit worrying really, isn't it? It's given that that's fundamental to our income stream, that we are reliant on a little black book somewhere to do that. Surely, and I think there was talk then about putting on a different sort of thing, but even on the spreadsheet, surely would be better than in a black book. Something that someone can flag up. It just seems bizarre, and of course the fact that this keeps getting pushed back, and clearly again it comes back to this resource issue there. Reliant on recruiting someone to change it or whatever, but it just seems, they're both done as fundamental. Well, one's fundamental, one's significant, but I think the fact that it's been hanging around about 10 years suggests it's a bit more than fundamental, really. I think that's the problem. It just comes out the same thing. That there's no point Richard doing this work if no one's going to do anything about it. And we appreciate there are problems there, but this needs to be flagged up at a higher level. I think this is the problem, isn't it?
I'd forgotten this, I apologise. I'm on page 140, HR. I'm also conscious that you may not be able to answer this question. It's 140. I'm referring to paragraph 3.8. Starts a consistent approach to references. The question really is, do we have a policy on obtaining and giving references? Because I'm very much aware that certainly in the last organisation I was in, we would not give anything more than date employed. And so I wondered if there was a policy that sort of pales into insignificance, because more and more companies and organisations are taking that approach because of the legal obligations and risks.
Yeah, I would have to get back to you on that one. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Any other comments or questions before we come to a conclusion on this one? Any?
Sorry, Chair. There was a suggestion from my colleague that the portfolio holder maybe should be attending in relation to this particular paper. I have to say personally, I don't think that's necessarily relevant. All we want to be ensure is that a message is got through to the cabinet member to look at how this is functioning in relation to the upper level of executive officer, whether this is this is being forcibly brought to their attention.
Well, I'll take that on myself to speak to the portfolio holder and represent what the committee says. Conclusion, the committee notes the comments of the report as it's laid out. So, next item, item 12, Basingstoke Voluntary Action, BVA, Paper H.
I might have to declare an interest because the Camrose Centre is part of Basingstoke Voluntary Action. It's currently managed by that. So I think probably well, we haven't got one of the lawyers here, but I'll just not take part in the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report, as you'll see, is a fairly short report, but it's following a request that we've received from Basingstoke Voluntary Action. For those of you who don't know, they're based over in the orchard, just over the back here. They're looking to try and to save some money, basically. One way in which they can do that is by stopping their membership of the Hampshire Pension Fund. At the moment, they've got 6 employees that are members of the effectively the superannuation pension scheme. It's not something they've offered to new employees for, I think, the past 6 years, but they've got some employees there who have obviously been with them for longer than that. And what they would like to do is transfer those employees from the superannuation scheme into a fixed contribution scheme, which would save them a minimum of about £11,000 a year. In order to do that, they need our agreement, because once they transfer their existing people out of the Hampshire Pension Fund, they need somebody to take over their liabilities that they've got to make up past year's deficits. They've said they'd be prepared to reimburse us as a council for any costs that we incur in doing that, and they'd be prepared to sign a legal agreement to that effect. But we wanted the portfolio holder wanted this committee's view on this before before he made a decision. So that's the crux of it. If there's any questions, we're pleased to take them.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the officer if he would kindly just talk through the maths a little bit more, because I note that on the page 179, 4.2, it speaks about this removes pension liabilities of approximately £450,000 from their balance sheet, which is a sizable sum of money, and one can see the advantages of that happening as far as they're concerned. And I would want to try and find a way of supporting this charitable organisation. They're very valuable to the town. But that in itself, I can't quite see. There's the suggestion that they reimburse the council for any extra costs. What's the potential liability to this authority in taking over their pension liability? I don't know. I can't quite easily identify in pound signs.
Okay. As you've said there, in 4.2, we've highlighted that the value of the deficit, if you like, which BBA has the pension fund, is about £450,000, and the pension actuary has agreed with them that they should pay in the order of currently £10,000, but increasing to £18,000 per year, which over the next 22 years they expect will clear that deficit. So the £18,000 annual contribution, which they're supposed to be paying from 17-18, will be enough to cover that £450,000 deficit. So there is a plan in place to cover that. What would happen is that £450,000 deficit, if we agreed, would transfer to the council, so it would effectively increase the deficit that we would show on our balance sheets. At the moment, we have a deficit on our pension fund because, like all employers that are part of the pension fund scheme, we've been underpaying in the past, and because of extended life expectancies and lower investment returns, we're having to make up for that deficit. So it would increase our deficit, but it would be covered, that deficit, by this £18,000 a year payment. So it should be wiped out, if the actuary is right, after about 22 years. So the cost to us would be £18,000 after 17-18 per year. That would be reimbursed to us by BVA, so long as they are in existence. So there'll be effectively a neutral, no impact on our bottom line. But the risk, as it says in the report, is that BVA may cease to exist at some point in the future, and for the next 22 years, the council will be liable for that payment. So if they weren't able to reimburse us, we would then have to bear that cost. Does that answer the question?
Not being rude, I'm just trying to get my mind around that, because this is really quite crucial to any any support that I could give to the request and the recommendation.
So try again. So effectively, if you took the £18,000 a year and multiplied it by 22 years, that should give you somewhere around the deficit that they currently have. So they would be paying off their deficit over 22 years at the moment £18,000 a year. That figure could change at some point in the future because the pension fund actually every 3 years, I think it is, does a revaluation. So that figure is more likely to go up and down, but it could go either way. That makes sense.
So, Chair, and you said they have 6 members currently. Are we aware of what that contribution is costing them right now?
They have provided me with the figures. If I can find them. Well, effectively, the full year cost at the moment is 30. I might have to check these figures. I think it's saying it's £30,000 a year. The cost for having the people in the pension fund. So that's made up of the fixed contribution plus the variable contribution that they have to pay for each employee. So making up for the past year's deficit plus the current year's contribution. So if they came out of the scheme, they would still have to make up the deficit, but they would save about 12,500 by being able to switch over to a cheaper pension scheme for them, to a fixed contribution scheme.
Thank you.
Any other questions at all? Okay, on that basis, we're asked to recommend that we support the council agreeing to taking on the BVA liabilities to the Hampshire Pension Fund. Is it the view of the committee, therefore, that if there are no other questions or comments, that we would want to do that or recommend? Councillor Parker.
I was just hoping that there was a chance we might have had some comment rather than just questions. To get,
I'm sort of funny.
I don't think we are, but unfortunately. But this seems to me to be an accounting exercise that we're talking about here. On the one hand, in terms of potential cost to the council. Now, bearing in mind that the core funding to the BVA currently runs at 115,000 plus per annum. And if there's any possibility that we were in a position as a local authority not to continue that support, that has an impact on their continuation and then their ability to continue to fund their 10 to 18,000 pounds a year. Could I just ask one other question of the officer, please, Chair? And that is this time crucial?
It's something that BBA have requested us to do. Short answer is I don't think it is particularly time crucial. It could happen at any time, but by agreeing to this, it enables to make them to make the saving from as soon as we agree, as long as they can get the agreement of their existing employees. So it's not time crucial, but the earlier it is agreed, the earlier they could make the saving. And it also is something they're concerned about in terms of appointing members to their board trustees and so on. The trustees at the moment are concerned about this £450,000 appearing in their balance sheet. So, and there's also a risk that if they were to make at the moment one of the existing employees who's in the scheme redundant, that they could be hit with some very high one-off costs, which that would obviously take a big knock on their finances. And so once this was agreed, that risk would be removed from them because the employees then wouldn't be entitled to that large one-off payment.
Sorry, Chair. Can I then also just ask, the recommendation says supports the council agreeing. I find that I would assume the council haven't yet agreed that. We might like to seek some sort of, the wording doesn't seem right. We can only make a recommendation to council to agree.
I think that's the case.
And the agreement this is delegated to the portfolio holder on behalf of the council, so the portfolio holder, Councillor Isaac, can make this decision. So it's basically what we're asking for is your view on it so that we can pass that on to him and then he can make a decision which may be affected by your view.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the more you hear it, the more questions it raises, I think. Well, say Councillor Oger could make the decision, but I'd have thought it would have been, wouldn't it be over the sort of finance limits? I mean, it's quite a big, I know we're not spending any money, but we're effectively taking on the liabilities. It's almost like reverse spending, isn't it? It's,
Yeah, we're taking on a liability of 450,000. However, it doesn't make a significant impact on the council's balance sheet. And then the various dates, 10,400 this year, 12,500 next, 15 afterwards, 18. Are they reimbursing us those payments?
Yes, yes is the short answer to that. Whatever the council has to pay out extra, they will be reimbursed by BVA. So there's no net impact on the council so long as BVA have got the money to do it. It's whether you regard, there is a risk there, it's if you regard BVA, they are a strategic partner that have been in existence for a long time. We said provide substantial funding to them and they're regarded as a key partner going forward. They're one of just a handful of strategic partners that we have. We don't have to do this, we can turn around to them and say no, but then obviously it's going to leave them with losing that opportunity to make the saving.
Chair, I mean, if the rules say that this is something the portfolio holder can sanction on his own authority, I guess we have to accept that. I have to say, definitely I would want to be able to offer support to Basingstoke Voluntary Organisation. I acknowledge what they do. However, I do think a decision such as this, because effectively there is, in a very short time, the council could be picking up that cost. This really should be a decision that should be approved by full council when we look in terms of that liability. And my hand would be going up. I have reservations as a member of this committee with the number of members present. We are not full committee here. We have a member who has to put themselves out of the debate, and we are only effectively 4 members of this committee. And I would suggest that maybe we should put a recommendation to full council, if there was any possibility we can do that the council offer this support, not for us to authorise the council now. That seems to be what we're being asked to do, is to authorise the council to take that commitment on.
So just to clarify, you're not being asked to make any decision here. All you're being asked to do is being asked for your views, and then it would be the portfolio holder who would make the decision. And we can pass the view on to the portfolio holder. You think it shouldn't be his decision, you think it should be council. But it would be useful to know whether you do fundamentally think that it's right that we should offer this support, or whether you think it's the wrong thing to do. You're not, it's not making a decision, it's just what's your opinion, your view on it.
yeah, I'm just happy to, I mean, I'm sort of supportive. I think it seems a good way of us giving them sort of in lieu of money effectively, because otherwise to cover this they'd probably have to ask for a bigger grant. So it seems a good way of dealing with it there, but it's just a query over the logistics of it. It does seem it's almost like giving them an unsecured loan in a way, really, isn't it? And I can't imagine the portfolio will be allowed to do that. Whereas the way we're doing it here, we're taking on the liability and they're going to pay it back, but it just seems a bit odd, the way it just strikes me as it would be I don't know, it come under a key decision. I can't remember what the numbers are, but it just because of the odd way it's being done. It's normally we give a grant to someone and that has to be signed off, whereas this was sort of we're accepting a liability and they're going to pay us back. It's unusual.
Just to find a way, maybe we're asked for a recommendation for this, and the sense is maybe that we believe in BVA as a valuable partner in Basingstoke, that we have some reservations, but maybe a recommendation should be to the portfolio holder, as part of our recommendation, is that he refers that to full council for a decision.
I agree to that. I'm very happy to pay to take it on, but I'm just slightly surprised that the portfolio holder can, in effect, write off £450,000.
I think the point that you also made here, that we are only 4 speaking members within this, means that that's not entirely representative of the committee either. But equally, I think there is a need to move this on because we're coming to end of fiscal years and, there are issues here. So if everybody's of a mind that we can make that recommendation, that we want to provide support, but we recommend that also that it's brought before full council then maybe that's moving this forward. Yes, Councillor Parker.
I have one other question of the officer. Well, it might not be. It seems to more come to mind. Are the officers aware of there being any other voluntary organisation that this authority supports in terms of core grant funding who also have members in the county pension scheme?
We've asked that question of the county council because they have a register of all the organisations there, and there's not any others that are in the same position at the moment as BBA, but that's not to say that there might not be somebody might come along in future. We have identified that there is a precedent that you might get other approaches in the future, and we'd have to be, but we think we've covered that by being clear here that the reason we think BVA would be okay would be because, first of all, they're a strategic partner. Secondly, they're withdrawing all of their existing employees from the scheme. And thirdly, that they would have to enter into a legal agreement with us to reimburse us the money.
Could I just, when you say identified not in the same position, and I think you've just sort of hinted at what some of that criteria might be, what exactly is that really saying? That there are other organisations that we core fund who do have employees in the Hampshire pension scheme. What is not same position, please?
As far as I know, there's 300, I think, employees that are part of the pension scheme, like BVA, but like councils across Hampshire. So there are a lot of organisations that are mentioned members of the scheme. Since, for example, the Citizens Advice Bureau or something like that. So you could get those organisations coming to the council in the future, asking for something along the same lines. So I was saying that there is a danger of precedent here. I couldn't tell you that there's any that are down to 6. I don't know how many members of staff they've got. Obviously, they've got a relatively small number at BVA, and that's where it starts to become critical to them. Because if they lose all of their employees in the scheme, if they were all to leave, then it would, as they in technical now, crystallise this liability, and they'd be presented with a bill effectively by the pension fund for £450,000, and that would probably be the end of the organisation because they wouldn't have the resources to pay it. They can afford to pay it off over 22 years, but not in one go. So that's why part of the reason why BVA can see their numbers dwindling of the current scheme, and they would like to. They're not going to get any cash from us. We're not giving them a loan as such. We're not giving them 450,000, but they will be able to remove that liability from their balance sheet, pass it to us, and then make the repayments through us.
I'm sorry, Chair, I can't support this. It's got to be, in my view, it has to be a decision. The worry of setting a precedent for me, and I think in the circumstances, I mean, I know my colleague has raised this point about portfolio holder presence. It would have been really very nice. I think it would have been perhaps courteous if it's something like this. We're having here now the officer having to try and effectively almost defend a stance that's been now taken by the portfolio holder, and I don't think this decision could, well, my view is I can't support this because I would say it has to be endorsed by full council because of the potential ramifications into the future. And I'm sorry that I have to say that.
Others, any comments or agree or disagree?
No, I stand by what I said earlier on. I do sympathise with the view, but I think I'll leave it.
Did you want to make an additional comment, Philip?
No.
So, just how to move on with this. The issue really is about, I guess, getting the portfolio to bring this to council. We see this as a council issue, and therefore our recommendation is that we're not saying we recommend that this paper be brought to full council for its decision.
I mean, the point I made, there must be a procedure, you know, normally they can sign off a certain amount, but does this, I think it's such an unusual situation that I think it probably falls outside the normal rules. I've never come across anything like this, so, I mean, so if the portfolio wants to sign off, that's up to him. I mean, I can see the sense of it, I'm supportive of it, that there is a potential danger of precedent, but as I say, as Philip said, we can deal with that, but it is just, I mean, I assume they've looked at it and you believe this, he can sign it off, so that's up to him. That's a decision for him then. But yeah, it's just where it falls in it just doesn't seem to fall any procedures that I'm used to seeing. There's normally, you know,
So in summary, we're broadly supportive of the proposal for BVA. Is that something that we're all saying? Yeah, we're broadly supportive. However, we're not comfortable with the way that the implication for balance sheet is being addressed by the current decision, and therefore it should be brought to the full council. Yeah? Should we go with that as a recommendation from the committee? Yeah? Okay. Fine, that's the last item on the agenda. It's 5:30. I'm sorry it's taken so long, but thank you all for your commitment during the whole afternoon. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.